shows.
Okay, so we're going to start off looking at a price ceiling example. And a common one in certain parts of the country is rent control, where the government decides that the rent should not be above a certain price. Here, as the picture is drawn, we see that the average rental will go for $1,500, and at that market price, 10,000 rentals will be rented out. But let's say the government decides that 1,500 is too high, and they think that 1,000 is a better level for rent, and so they put into place this price ceiling. And as we know, that's going to cause certain predictable issues. We see that the quantity demanded is much higher than the quantity supplied. So you have more people showing up to get apartments, particularly at this nice low rent, than are people willing to actually rent them out. So you're going to, of course, have a shortage, as we learned is common with price ceilings. Now, how does that happen in the real world? Various things can happen. The owners of the apartment buildings can sell them. They can be turned into things other than apartment buildings. The apartments can go condo, where instead of being rentals, that they will now be apartments that can be bought. And so these are the various things that can happen that can cause the number of apartments to be much less than it used to be, as well as much less than is what is demanded at that price. All right, well, that's all familiar enough, but one of the things we see happen with price ceilings a lot of times is if we look at this quantity that is being sold. So let's say 9,000 are being rented and 11,000 are wanted. All right, so there's 2,000 people out there who really, really want an apartment and aren't getting it at $1,000. Or another way to look at it is if we take the 9,000 quantity up to the demand curve. As we've learned about the demand curve, the points on it are showing us the price people are willing to pay for a particular quantity. And if 9,000 is the quantity that is available, then the true willingness to pay is 1,800. So another problem you can have then with price ceilings is the black market can take off. So there's this incentive then for people to find ways to encourage them getting the apartment as opposed to another person seeking it. Maybe there's a kickback, maybe there's a bribe, maybe there's some other arrangements made under the table, those sorts of things. And if that happens, and if it is prevalent, whether it's rent control or any other price ceiling, what can happen is the actual price being paid is much higher than market, and certainly much higher than was hoped for at the 1,000. So it can actually make a situation much worse when you have a price ceiling and the black market takes off. Okay, so let's look at another example of a price ceiling. A bit of a morbid topic would be organ donations. Now, you may not really think about this as being an economic issue because it does not have a price. But really what we're saying with this issue is that it is a price ceiling. So I've just drawn a hypothetical demand and supply here where if prices were paid for the donation of your organs, you would get $2,500. Obviously, I guess it'd go to your estate or whoever your heirs are. But the organs would have a price of $2,500. And if that, in fact, was the case, according to the supply and demand, there would be 800 donations, let's say, a year. Don't know if these numbers are accurate. But in the reality we live in is it's illegal to pay for organs to be donated for a lot of ethical reasons. There's fear that poor people would feel like they have to donate their organs, or they might even kill themselves so that they could leave money for their family. And then, of course, there'd be concerns that people would kill their own relatives so that when the relative dies, they can have the organs. There's lots of concerns, lots of moral and ethical reasons why we argue that we should not pay for organs. But what we do need to realize is if we have that as a law, then there is a market consequence. And so what we can see then is when you say that you cannot pay anything for the organs, you're basically setting the price as $0, right? So if the price is actually $0, then we're in this familiar situation where the price is the minimum price, I guess any price that could be charged is going to be below the actual market price. So we're comparing $0 to $2,500. At $2,500, the market clears. Quantity supplied equals quantity demanded. There will be 800 organ donations. And at that price, it's a little hard to imagine or to think about it, but technically everybody is getting the organ donation that they are willing to pay for. That's what we mean by clearing the market. Whereas at $0, we see that the quantity demanded is now 1,200 and the quantity supplied is 350. So now we have the familiar situation we see with any article you find about organ donation is that there's a terrible shortage. And in fact, this would be a shortage of what, 850 at the price of $0. So this is just another way to understand price ceilings. Here we're seeing it in the market of organ donations where the price is actually being held to $0. And we may not want to do it for a lot of reasons, but pure economics would say one way to solve this problem would be to allow there to be a market price. And then you would have the market clearing. All right, let's look at an example of price floors that we see in the real world. You commonly see them in the agricultural area. I'm going to do wheat, where we're looking at the quantity of millions of bushels of wheat being produced and sold. And the reason we see this in the agricultural market is the idea that when the crop is really abundant for one farmer, it's often abundant for a lot of farmers. When the weather is positive, for example, that's one of the factors we learned will actually increase the supply curve and result in a lower equilibrium price. And then the farmers feel like, well, I've got all this stuff to sell, but it's selling at such a low price, it's hard to make a profit. Then when the price is high, why is the price high? Often it's because there were other market conditions that made the supply very tight. So the price might be high, but they don't have a lot to sell. So that's part of the reason they have these price controls, because they're trying to help support the farmer. Part of it is to give them stability so they can plan, because you make a decision in the beginning of the growing season. You don't know what the price is until the end. So a lot of times what we see with these agricultural programs is the government will be guaranteeing some minimum price. So if that was the case, let's go with that what we're seeing here is the resulting price that the farmer will be able to sell their wheat at, their bushels of wheat at $3. And at that price, the market would clear with 8 million bushels. But let's say that the government had guaranteed a minimum price for the farmers to sell at, and we'll call that $5. So at $5, then we're going to see the farmers are willing to supply and sell a higher quantity than people are willing to buy. So let's say that at that $5, the quantity supplied is 11 million, and at $5, the amount people are willing to buy might only be 5 million. And so now we have a situation where 11 million are being brought to the market, but only 5 million are going to be coming off the shelf. And so you've got this surplus of 6 million. So what happens in the real world with those extra 6 million? Various things can happen. One of the things we see happen a lot, and one of the reasons I chose the wheat market, was we end up with this surplus wheat. So our government is the one that actually buys it up and allows this price floor to continue. They could destroy the wheat if they wanted to do that. You've seen that at different times at different products. They can donate the wheat to other countries perhaps, or try and sell it to other countries if they can get some money out of that. So the point is then the consequence of the price floor is you're going to be left with this surplus, and the government's going to have to do something to absorb that surplus. Otherwise, it could find itself back on the market in some way and actually cause maybe another type of black market that would be causing the price to fall. So anyway, hopefully that helps you understand the real world application of price floors, the agricultural price supports that we see in our country.